The galaxy was full of whispers. Planets burned under the red light of the Krex dominion, a cruel empire that moved from world to world like a storm. The Volari, once proud and peaceful, were now hiding in the ruins of their shining cities. Their fleets were gone, their soldiers scattered, and their queen had sent one last signal into the endless dark, a call for help. It was not meant for Deathworlders. It was not meant for the humans of Earth. But space does not listen to fear, and signals go where they will. On a forgotten outpost beyond the edge of mapped stars, an old radar tower blinked. Inside the cold steel walls of the Iron Dawn station, a single light flashed on a screen that had been silent for years. Commander Elias Ward looked up from his desk, the blue glow painting his tired face. The signal was faint, full of static, but the message was clear enough. It was a voice filled with despair, a language he barely remembered but still understood. Someone was begging for help. Coordinates followed. Valerie Space. Ward leaned back in his chair. The Volari. Once they had been the ones who turned their backs when humanity needed them. Once they had watched Earth burn from a distance. But that was long ago. Now, Ward only saw the tone of the message, the fear, the helplessness. He stood up, shoulders heavy but eyes sharp. "Get me the bridge," he said softly. "We're going hunting." His officers hesitated. They knew what that meant. The human fleet was supposed to stay hidden. The Council had banned Earth ships from crossing into alien space after the last Great War. But Ward didn't care. He had buried too many good people because someone waited too long for permission. He would not do that again. The Iron Dawn Initiative had slept for almost a generation. Its ships floated in the dark like steel ghosts, waiting for a voice to wake them. When the command went out, engines roared to life. Hulls long coated in dust began to hum. Soldiers who thought their service was over rushed back to duty, faces lit with the cold glow of purpose. The humans didn't shout or sing. They worked in silence, because they all knew what was coming. They were Deathworlders, born from a planet that tried to kill them every day. They didn't need speeches to fight for life. The jump through hyperspace tore the stars apart for a heartbeat. Then they were there, at the edge of the Volari world of Lumeris. The view from orbit was like watching a nightmare. The skies burned with red plasma. Valorie's cities were collapsing under the Krex assault. Their silver towers turned black with smoke. Down below, civilians ran for shelter that didn't exist anymore. The Krex fleet, shaped like jagged blades, surrounded the planet, raining fire on everything that moved. Ward stared at the scene through the command glass. His jaw tightened. "Targeting solutions," he said. "Sir, the Krex have 30 warships. We have 7, his tactical officer said. 7 is enough." The order was simple. The human ships moved into formation, not sleek and graceful like Volari vessels, but heavy, scarred, and built for endurance. Their armor looked ancient, but their power was something the Krex had never seen. The first railgun salvo ripped through the enemy lines before they even detected the incoming fire. The sound of impact echoed through the comms as if thunder had crossed the void. Krex cruisers shattered into fragments. Missiles followed, a storm of guided fire that turned space into chaos. The Volari defense grid went silent, their commanders frozen in disbelief. They didn't know who had arrived. They only saw the Krex fleet burning. Within minutes, the space around Lumeris cleared. Half the enemy ships were gone, the rest fleeing in panic. Ward's ship stayed still, engines glowing faint blue against the wreckage. The battle was over before it had truly begun. The Volari command center came online, their screens flickering with static. A trembling voice broke through. "Unknown fleet, identify yourselves. You are in restricted." Ward's calm voice cut through the noise. "This is Earth Fleet Command Iron Dawn Initiative. You called for help. We're answering." The Volari officers stared in silence. The humans? The Deathworlders? The ones they had feared for centuries? The thought felt impossible. Yet their scanners confirmed it. Carbon-based life from Sol. No one had seen humans in over 50 years. The legend said they were gone, too dangerous to survive, too fierce to live among others. And now, they had come back. Down on the planet's surface, the Valari Queen, Althene of the Silver Courts, watched the battle from her crumbling palace. Her golden eyes widened as the enemy vanished. Around her, her advisors whispered in confusion. One of them said, trembling, "Your Majesty, they are humans." She turned toward the sky, her silver wings flickering in the light of distant explosions. They came. From the shadows, she whispered. The Deathworlders came. When the human ships landed, the ground shook. Their carriers unfolded like metal beasts, releasing columns of soldiers in black armor. But there was no cruelty in their movements. They carried food crates, medical packs, and water units. They spoke little, their helmets hiding their faces, but their actions spoke louder than any words. They found the wounded first. They fixed broken generators. They carried Valari children out of the rubble without hesitation. Commander Ward stepped into the ruins of the palace. His armor was scratched and marked, but his posture was straight. The Valari guards raised their weapons out of fear, but the Queen held up her hand. She studied him in silence, her delicate features filled with confusion and awe. He bowed slightly, just enough to show respect. "Your Majesty," he said, "the Krex won't return soon. You're safe, for now." "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why would Deathworlders come for us?" He paused. For a moment it looked like he might not answer. Then he said softly, "Because someone has to." Those words hung in the air like a promise. Around them the world was still burning, but for the first time in years, there was something new. Hope. The Valari saw it in the humans' eyes, in their quiet strength, in the way they faced danger without flinching. They realized that the stories had been wrong. The Deathworlders weren't monsters. They were survivors. They were protectors. That night the humans stayed on Lumeris, repairing what they could. The stars above shimmered faintly through the smoke. Children watched the human soldiers with wide eyes, whispering to each other that maybe the legends weren't all true. Maybe Deathworlders were something else. Something that appeared only when the galaxy was in its darkest hour. And as the Iron Dawn fleet floated above the wounded world, silent and strong, Commander. Days passed after the battle, and the Valari world of Lumeris was slowly breathing again. Smoke still rose from the broken towers, but there was light in the streets now. Human engineers worked beside Valari builders, their machines loud and fast, fixing water lines, power systems, and hospitals. The Valari people watched in quiet wonder. They had been told humans were ruthless, that Deathworlders only knew how to destroy. But here they were, repairing roofs, treating the wounded, sharing their rations. The truth felt strange, like sunlight after endless rain. Commander Elias Ward stood near the edge of a ruined bridge overlooking the city. His armor was marked with dust and ash, and his eyes were tired, but he didn't rest. Every hour, new reports arrived. Supply drops, medical zones, refugee lists. He signed them all, then helped where he could. He didn't see himself as a hero. He just couldn't walk away. Queen Althene visited him one morning. She moved carefully, her silver wings folded behind her, a light scarf hiding the worst of her wounds. Around her, human soldiers stopped working for a moment and saluted. She nodded back in quiet respect before turning to Ward. "You have done more than I could have asked," she said. "You saved a people who once feared your kind." Ward didn't look up from the console he was fixing. "Fear doesn't matter," he said simply. "You called for help." We answered, her voice grew soft. "Why would you risk so much for us? The Krex are not just one enemy. They will return in greater numbers." He finally looked up. "Maybe they will," he said, his expression calm. "But we've faced worse. On Earth, everything tried to kill us, storms, beasts, even the air. We learned to survive because no one else would help us. That's what we do. We survive, and we don't let others fall if we can stop it." The Queen watched him for a long time. In his calm words, she heard something powerful, something more than pride or duty. It was empathy, the same kind that had vanished from most of the galaxy long ago. As humans and Valari worked together, a strange bond began to grow. Valari engineers learned the rough, practical ways of human repair crews. Human medics learned how to treat Valeri wounds that shimmered with energy instead of blood. Children followed human soldiers everywhere, offering them flowers or shining stones as thanks. And at night, campfires glowed across the ruined city, Valeri songs mixing with human laughter. But peace never lasts long on the edge of war. 3 days later, human scanners caught something in orbit, massive energy readings. The Krex had returned, this time with an armada. Hundreds of warships darkened the stars. The human fleet was outnumbered 20-1. The alert spread fast. Human soldiers ran to their stations. Valeri guards armed themselves with shaking hands. The queen stood in the palace courtyard, looking up at the red dots appearing in the sky. "They won't stop," she said. "They'll burn everything to erase what you gave us." Commander Ward stood beside her, his voice firm. "Then we'll give them something they'll never forget." Within minutes, the Iron Dawn fleet rose from orbit, engines burning bright blue. The humans moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. They didn't panic. They didn't hesitate. Each ship took position in a tight formation, facing the Krex head-on. The Krex commander sent a message across the system, his voice filled with cruel amusement. "Deathworlders, you think your fragile fleet can stop us? You'll die screaming like your world once did." Ward listened in silence, then replied in a cold, quiet tone. "We don't scream. We fight." The first shots cut through the void. Human ships fired railguns faster than the Krex expected, slicing through enemy cruisers like blades through paper. But the Krex fleet was massive, and soon, beams of plasma filled the sky. Explosions rocked the human lines. One ship, the Vigilant, took heavy damage, spinning out of control before detonating. The shockwave rattled every hull, but no one retreated. On the ground, the Valeri saw streaks of light in the night sky, each one a battle between giants. Human dropships descended to protect evacuation zones. Soldiers jumped out, setting up barricades in the ruins. Valeri civilians watched in disbelief as humans fought side by side with them, shouting orders, firing weapons, dragging the wounded to cover. Queen Altheian stood on the command platform, speaking to her people through the city's speakers. "Stand with them," she cried. "Fight with the Deathworlders who came when no one else would." And the Valeri did. With human weapons and their own energy blades, they joined the battle. Together, they turned every street into a line of defense. The Krex didn't expect resistance like this. For every human ship that fell, 2 Krex cruisers went dark. For every soldier who fell on the ground, another stood to take their place. Commander Ward coordinated the fight from the bridge of his ship, his voice calm even as alarms blared around him. "Hold the line," he said. "No one falls alone." The final stage came when the Krex tried to drop their command ship through the clouds. Ward saw the opportunity and gave the order. His flagship, Iron Dawn, changed course, engines screaming as it rammed directly into the Krex command vessel. The impact split both ships apart in a burst of fire and debris that lit up the sky. Down below, the Valeri saw the explosion and went silent. For a long moment, the stars burned bright with flame and then faded. The Krex fleet was breaking apart, retreating into hyperspace. The invasion was over. When the smoke cleared, the human fleet was gone. Not destroyed, not defeated, just gone. No radio signals, no transmissions. Only wreckage and silence. It was as if they had vanished into the shadows they came from. Days later, Valeri scouts found a small beacon on a mountain ridge near the capital. It pulsed faint blue, sending a repeating message into space. The Queen herself climbed the path to see it. On the metal surface, engraved in human script, were simple words. "When the weak cry out, we remember." Deathworld Command Altheian placed her hand over the cold metal and felt tears rise in her eyes. She whispered softly, "They aren't monsters. They're what monsters fear." Across the galaxy, stories spread of what had happened on Lumeris. No one believed it at first, but the Valeri showed them the recordings. The human fleet arriving from nowhere, fighting against impossible odds, and disappearing after saving millions. Soon even the most distant colonies spoke their name with respect. When aliens cried for help, it was not the gentle ones who came. It was the Deathworlders, the children of a cruel planet, who stepped from the shadows to remind the galaxy what true courage looked like. And though no one knew where they went after Lumeris, every lost world remembered their promise. That when darkness rises again, somewhere in the void, the Deathworlders will hear the cry, and they will